Hola, Minasan! Welcome back for another round of BattleTech Mechwarrior research. This is viewer recommended. Vicryl, I'm always mispronouncing your name. I am so sorry. Vicryl65. Strongly recommended. Check out Text Talks BattleTech 101, the great houses of the Inner Sphere, returning back to the Black Pants Legion channel. Links down in the description below. Hopefully it's focused a little bit more focused on the primary great houses from what I'm understanding. Even though I went through Sven's look. I guess it was basically on the bigger lore, but this one is supposed to be a little bit more specific, which would make sense. A little bit more specific on each of the big houses that I'm covering, and this will be this could be pretty helpful to for me to focus on the more specific houses like Kurita, which we'll probably go through again, and the Lyran Commonwealth, which I guess I'm gonna go through again. But at least this way I could have a little bit better list to look out on the more positive side, have a better list of the great houses that I can go more deeper into instead of stumbling around the other houses and not seeing the ones that are actually affecting the whole of the universe, BattleTech universe. So yeah, big thanks to Vicryl. This could prove to help keep everything nice and streamlined, keep the research nice and streamlined, and not get too random. And then check out the houses mechs, whatever they got that specific mechs. Although it seems like they all like the Atlas. The Atlas is hardcore. It's got tire for nuts. I know I'm gonna be playing that. I'm gonna be playing that one out hard. All right, call to action: comment, like, subscribe, follow, and hit the notification bell. And let us begin the research. Oh, whoop! Hold on. 80s. You gotta love it. You have no choice. I'm a new Mechwarrior. Today's lesson: the great houses of the Inner Sphere.
Welcome, new Mechwarriors, to the Inner Sphere, where you can keep whatever money you find so long as you live to payday. For our first lesson, the great houses. Slide, please. So the great houses are the 6, or for people who can actually calculate projection power on an appreciable strategic scale, the 4 peer states, 1 remnant, and 1 hermit kingdom that make up the Inner Sphere. No, it's not a perfect sphere. Yes, there are things outside of it. Today we're talking about these assholes. These are the great houses of the Inner Sphere, and they're all very different in varying ways, but are mostly the same, in that they are all occasionally not very nice to each other.
Oh,
they
like
also
Warhammer.
Possess vast arsenals of planet-killing weapons, and on special occasion will trundle them out for public display. If you want to know why these people are fighting over such vast territory and why they're so committed to erasing portions of their collective industrial base, history, and civilization, well, it's complicated. My best take on it is a 2-parter, and most people find that a bit much. So let this serve as a basic introduction to your career in the world of Mechwarriors, and a primer on who's most likely to kill you when you inevitably fuck up. But firstly, a disclaimer. I am biased. As a mercenary plying his trade in the Inner Sphere, I find concepts such as warfighting ideology largely a position of what you can cover up from the general public. Mainly because, at the end of the day in the Inner Sphere, it's about you and yours, and smoking craters tell no tales. They make a hell of an autocannon. But to better illustrate my point, let's just dive in. This map is from 3067. Maps from after that are somewhat messed up, for a number of reasons. And on an unrelated note, let's just brush this radioactive ash off here, and there we go. 3067. Don't mind the flickering on the screen. I'm told it's mostly harmless. Mostly. Let's begin with the great houses themselves. I'll be moving clockwise as we go,
Okay.
for those of you who understand time, and left-hand feed for people who understand timing.
Draconis Combine. And the house Kurita. Which we already
Welcome
took care
to
of.
the wacky, weird world of the Draconis Combine. Welcome to a pervasive class system, and home to the galaxy's own homegrown, no-bullshit, sword-wielding, authoritarian samurai ruling class.
Yeah!
Oh, yes. This place is
Space
literally
Japan.
built on pre-spaceflight Terran Shogunate-era Japan. It's a monolithic, all-encompassing bureaucratic machine run on war and conquest that thinks optimal Christmas dinner is, by tradition, fried chicken. They're a fun collection of ideas. Behold, this is their throne room. Take that in.
Hardcore.
This isn't just for show.
This is Mortal
This is
Kombat.
their military. These are their uniforms. These are their mechs. They fight like this all the time. Yes.
Yeah, this is
those
funny.
Swords are very real and do brutal work. Alright, so back to the guy in the chair. It is frequently a guy in charge of this. So this guy is called the coordinator. He runs the place. There is very little distinction between the coordinator as a person and the Draconis Combine as a whole. When people refer to the dragon in reference to Kurita as a house or a nation, it's interchangeable between the two entities. And no, the Draconis Combine doesn't celebrate the godhood of rulership with divine mandate. However, the coordinator's word carries essentially the same weight within their sphere of influence, so I'd not invite trouble, as Kurita tends to bury its enemies deep, headless, and by the million.
Yo, that's
They
the
have
Yakuza.
no issues with troubleshooting in government, as trouble should be shot in the Draconis Combine. And if there is anything to fear from these guys, it's that they believe in a manifest destiny which involves House Kurita controlling everything. The Draconis Combine started as an agreement between two worlds, which was then fed war and conquest through House Kurita's leadership. Kurita has had total control since the beginning, aside from that one cadet branch that one time in the family who was wiped out long ago. As far as how this thing runs, well, the 5 pillars represent the Draconis Combine. The pillar of gold is the government. The pillar of steel is the military. The pillar of teak is the people. The pillar of ivory is religion, philosophy, zen, and all that crap.
What's with the fried
And then there's
chicken?
jade, the economy. These 5 pillars of state philosophy are represented in the ministries of state organized through them. For instance, the pillar of steel encompasses the Ministry of War, the Department of Indoctrination, the Bureau of Substitution, the Assembly of
Basically,
the Grand
bureaucracy.
Inquisitor, the Admiralty, the Physician Staff of the Dragon, and various minor administration authorities. Speaking of authorities, Draconis Combine bureaucracy tends to be impenetrable to outsiders, impossible to reason with, and largely maintains the status quo. Actual decisions are typically made by people with significant military rank, in the form of military governors appointed to oversee civilian authorities. When in doubt, the decision maker is typically the one with the sword. And if you want to see that sword up close and real fast, you only need to fail to take its bearer seriously, or merely disrespect their presence. Also, they had this whole death to mercenaries thing for a while. Not my favorite government to work with. Then again, they rarely need mercenaries ever because the constant fighting and insanity of the samurai class means they're pretty much ready to throw down whenever. If they lack a
Wow, he's
they'll
just
find
stepping
one
on his
quick.
head.
The leaders of the Draconis military are often peerless warlords, equally at home in local shogunal politics or on the battlefields of their neighbors. The Draconis Combine is the state that war built, maintained by Bushido, psychotic warriors, and a shitload of weapons. Finding Kurita forces in your backyard is frequently the precursor to speaking Japanese in your near future, whether you want to or not.
BattleTech. Man, that was great. Oh my gosh, the Federated Sons and House Dabian. That, oh my gosh, that was just hilarious. Space Japan. Right. Oh my gosh. If there's no space Puerto Rico, no house in Puerto Rico, then I gotta go with Japan. I'm biased towards Japan, unless you give me my space Puerto Rico BattleTech. We'll our mechs will be like the hydraulic cars out in the West Coast with the Mexicans, where it goes. The mechs will be like that. You'll see the legs bouncing up and down as they walk up, and you hear loud salsa music. You start hearing loud salsa music. All of a sudden, here comes the mechs on hydraulic going. Just like the cars where they they go all like this and everything, go as they drive along. You'll see that. Space Hispanics can't mess with the space Hispanics. The Cubans will have their mechs looking like 1950s vehicles. The Mexicans will be coming in with the hydraulics. We Puerto Ricans will be blaring loud music as our mechs walk along. Don't mess with space Hispanics. Oh man. Alright, let's do the Federated Sons and House Davian.
Next door is ruled by House Davion, the so-called good kid of the successor houses. The noble one. The one that likes autocannons a lot. That's these guys. Technically, the state is the Federated Sons, and they're another fun monarchy. House Davion is descended from English and French nobility, operating as constitutionally bound monarchs, and has been, since ever, trying to reinforce their position as champions of liberty and personal freedom at every annoying turn.
Space Britain and France.
Because of this, most people think House Davion, and by extension, the Federated Sons, are self-righteous assholes. And they are not wrong. Mostly. But see, the story is a bit funny on that. Originally, the Federated Sons was a federation. In time, the founding polities chose delegates to form a high council who would, among themselves, elect a president to lead them. But the political machinations of the Davion family were all about having a monarchy, so they pushed the presidency into that, and since then, the Davion family has ruled. Which is really good for them. Mostly good for the Federated Sons, and has worked out for the most part. However, Davions being Davions, one had to rule them all. So there was an early Davion civil war. The 5 marches had to decide for themselves who would be the first prince, and sharing was, apparently, not a serious consideration.
Yeah, well, that's a monarchy for you in Britain and France.
Early Davion civil war, Alexander Davion, went on to pass more legislation than any of his predecessors because he had total military support. Turns out you can make people vote how you want with a bayonet. However, the story doesn't get any worse really for some time at least. To their credit, House Davion was not a despot. They encouraged then and still champion free speech, individual liberties, and personal freedom. But in the end, it is a monarchy. Considering the mostly beneficial
parliamentary constitution,
some will label Davion a father knows best state, which has many times but not always been justified in its actions. As such, it is seen as one of the more stable houses on account of broad public support. I will admit this, though they can be miserably righteous and annoying, they're frequently not evil, just smug. And yes, that is just as bad.
Okay.
The armed forces of the Federated Sons have historically been one of the most professional militaries in the Inner Sphere, originally formed from peacekeepers and always kept as modern as state industries could allow. These guys even developed the predecessors to the Warhammer on their own dime in the earliest years of battle mechs. Even when they're wrong, they're almost right. Davion may not pay you well, but they won't bury you for no reason. Mostly.
Well, that was pretty brief. Huh. I guess I'm gonna have to I guess the House Davion will be the next house to research, because that was a very short one. House Liao. I guess it's Space China. The Capellan Confederation. So, alright. So there wasn't much to them. They just they just live on a constitutional monarchy. It sounds like they do a constitutional monarchy. You know, the monarchs still get to have the final say and all that and everything, Davion, but they let the people live in peace and such. Sounds like similar to Steiner, Space Germany, you know, the that live and let live type of thing. But I guess, but from what Tex is explaining, Davion is 100% the good guys. They're the good boys. I guess they're the face as opposed to the heel, in a sense, because they could still do, I don't know, anti-heroes. Would that be safe to say that they're more anti-hero? You know what I'm saying? Like Stone Cold Steve Austin and Wolverine. That they still, you know, saying they won't have a problem crossing the line, but they will always still stay on the side of good. You know what I'm saying? Anti-heroic house. I'm very curious if that's the case. I'm going to have to do Davian next. Alright, what's Space China here? Or is it Space Korea? Or is it Space Laos?
Next door are these guys. I don't like them as much for a number of reasons. The Capellan Confederation is the youngest kid on the block as successor states go. It's a socialistic police state that has almost but not always been under the control of one family, House Liao. The head of the state is the Chancellor, who is, in the Capellan Confederation, one nod away from making you disappear. To say that it is a police state is not an act of hyperbole, but substantiated fact. However, it wasn't always so.
Space
What
North
started
Korea.
as a collection of states uniting for common defense and well-being slowly grew over hundreds of years through successive generations of philosophy and leadership from one house into an autocratic state with a centrally controlled economy. Some would say this is a functional dictatorship, but dictators tend toward having some sort of functional agenda or understanding of strategic power. But in truth, there's actually three forces that run this place, at least in theory. They are the Chancellor, the Prefectorate, and the House of Scions. The Chancellor is the CIC of the Armed Forces, Special Forces, and the face of the state in matters of foreign policy. The Chancellor can also make decrees and legislative changes at will. It's a powerful position, to say the least, and has nearly always been a lifetime appointment for House Liao. The Prefectorate is the body of state regional entities and greater nobility. The House of Scions isn't, mostly. Needless to say, the Chancellor seems to get his or her way more often than not. But the other two governmental branches will act to frustrate or block particular agendas. What's interesting about the Capellan Confederation is that its citizens, or rather I should say resident aliens born there, are not citizens. Not yet, anyways. In fact, in the Confederation, citizenship must be earned, and the state is the sole measure of that esteem. Children are legally, in every way, wards of the state under limited provisional supervision granted by the government to their parents or other assigned legal guardians. At age 15, each child is thoroughly examined by the government to see if they have a proven commitment to the state. Those who are deemed worthy gain citizenship. Those who are not are given a grace period for a second evaluation, but failure to measure up as a citizen for any reason results in becoming a non-citizen, which are frequently referred to as state servitors. By the succession wars,
that's a nasty scheme.
Become an enormous part of the population. A population that, I must state, had no rights and was legally state property. This was reversed in 3052 when Sun Tzu Liao became chancellor and abolished servitor slavery. Not all Capellan chancellors are assholes. Most, though, well, the record speaks for itself. The military of the Confederation Armed Forces have traditionally been the underdog, but have never shied away from a fight. They frequently are pushed into doing far too much with far too little, and on top of it have to face the catastrophic political and military meddling of a chancellor who may or may not understand the difference between entertainment and war. The fact that Capellan State has not been conquered outright speaks volumes to the abilities of the CCAF, who have demonstrated battlefield insanity as a doctrine for nearly 8 centuries.
Yeah, that makes
the
sense.
The Capellan economy is centrally planned and is designed on the principle that sufficient planning can overcome any hardship. This has produced mixed results. The Confederation always endures, but at what cost?
Yo, that's actually insane. Straightforward and simple, huh? You can't be a citizen until you're 15, and even then you get evaluated, and if you're not worthy, you can't be a citizen. Dang. Yo, that's one hell of a scheme. Easy slavery. You know, they could still be good enough, and the bureaucrats could sit there and say, "Yeah, you failed anyway." Even though everything on the paper says it's good, you're good to be a citizen. Dang, they'll just put you. Wow, that's a nasty system. And the fact that the chancellor has absolute say, even though the House of Zions and the Prefectorate try every which way they can to counter him and balance him out, how they still? I don't get it. How is it that they're still holding up? You know, with a system like that. I mean, I guess the indoctrination part is what's helping out. You know, indoctrinate them at childhood and you know, from infancy to 15. You know what I mean? They have no notion whatsoever. Damn. No, that's a scary faction. That's a scary house. I sure wouldn't want to live in a state like that. Also, that's not even socialism, quite honestly. That's not even. I don't think that's even autocracy. That's North Korea. That's North Korea, hands down. Free World, the Free Worlds League and House Marek. Why do I have a feeling this is Space America, Space USA?
Next door is the Free Worlds League. I don't say House Marek because, well, it's complicated.
Everything's complicated.
Terrible as some make it out to be. Yes, the greatest threat to Americ is Americ, but glory to Americ. But it wasn't always so. The Free Worlds League was actually formed before the Terran hegemony, born out of the early Terran Alliance's colonial struggles and then collapse as an early power. Your homeworld falling apart in early colonization was, well, somewhat on the catastrophic end of things. So nations which weathered that catastrophe learned self-reliance. The Free Worlds League was originally an agreement between 3 existing nations, the Marek Republic, the Regulan Principality, and the Federation of Oriente. Amazingly enough, the founders of the League owe most of their success to a guy named George Humphreys, who was the negotiator between the 3 nations and was honored as the first Speaker of Parliament for 5 damn sessions.
Oh, they got a parliament.
They didn't throw their negotiator away when they came together as a nation. They threw nobody under the bus. Instead, they championed him. That is righteous. So how'd it go down? You see, of the 3 nations, Marek was on top locally, and Marek didn't like the idea of a union at all, not at first. He thought it wouldn't work. Working with others seemed like a bad idea, in fact, considering the state of galactic affairs, but Humphreys wore him down, like a good friend does, and the only reason I bring this up is because what wore him down wasn't politics. It wasn't an appeal to power or glory or riches or conquest or the history books. It was in fact nerd shit. Detlev collected historic awards and trophies. Raju Salaj, Prince of Regulus, collected miniatures, figurines, and books and paintings. And these 2 guys nerding out about their neat stuff they liked and had collected contributed as much toward the founding of the Free Worlds League as anything else. Ostensibly, the Free Worlds League is a federal republic, with each province granted a grand measure of self-rule and sovereignty. And as you'd expect, the Free Worlds League is a complex creature, politically speaking. The Parliament is technically a supreme federal and legislative authority, but there's some caveats to that. For one, membership of the Parliament was, for a time, determined by the amount of taxes paid into the Treasury.
Oh, really?
And then there's the self-rule problem. All that self-rule means you have all sorts of people in Parliament. Some nations could be dictatorships, others a theocracy, others a democracy, and yet all under one flag. Naturally, this causes some problems. It's why, for the most part, the Free Worlds League, through its history, has operated in a near-permanent state of martial law under the Captain General, who is frequently, but not always, a Merrick. Historically, the power of the Parliament has waned with every major conflict, crisis, or state of emergency, whereas the power of the Captain General has increased. That's right. The Free Worlds League drops their issues at Merrick's welcome mat, rings the doorbell, and runs the fuck home.
They leave me flaming poo.
Originally intended for military matters on behest of Parliament, 8 centuries of emergency powers later, the Captain General stands as first among equals, and is more or less House Merrick's personal lordship of the Free Worlds League, with all of the hazards that entails. The Free Worlds League has defined its economic niche through innovative technologies and free trade, which I feel is a response engineered in opposition to the then crumbling Terran Alliance's blanket of tariffs and protective customs laws. The laissez-faire approach to the free world's economic principles has made more friends than enemies. However, poor risk management analysis has caused problems. For instance, after conquering the magistracy of Canopus during the Reunification War, the Free Worlds League invested oceans of currency, industry, and effort into rebuilding the Canopan economy. Canopus returned the favor by outcompeting and underbidding the Free Worlds League economy in the region, by mostly using principally cheaper labor and lots of industry they didn't have to pay to build. This resulted in a 10-year economic recession for the entire Free Worlds League. No good deed goes unpunished.
Wow.
Since they've learned quite a bit, and have managed their economic affairs with care to guard against the systemic mayhem and shock as caused by other states, good intentions or not. Culturally, the Free Worlds League is a mix. In fact, it is probably the most diverse state there is in the Inner Sphere. The principal language is mostly a derivative of Star League English. On any given world, you might hear Czech, Arabic, or Urdu. With the sheer number of cultures and political systems present in the Free Worlds League, it must be said that if there was anything that unified them, it was not a Merrick, but more an ideology. And that's entrepreneurship, a belief in the free market, and the idea that anybody could make it if they tried. It was from the prosperity of the Star League that this philosophy grew, I feel. The succession wars didn't dampen their spirits either. They merely made them appreciate what they had, and encouraged them to continue fighting for it. And maybe each other from time to time, because hey, glory to Merrick.
What is this? Oh, Steiner. With that, but big giant mechs, bigger and bigger mechs, and mechs in the throne room flanking the the house, the ruler. Oh my gosh, Space America, Space USA. There's not much really to say for it. It's Space USA. You know, they got the free market, Federal Republic, democracy, hot dogs, hamburgers, pizza, everything USA. I think that's going to be the last house I'm going to cover, the last major house in my research to cover, because yeah, I think it's pretty obvious what they're all about. And you know, if you understand USA, then you'll understand the Free Worlds League. So that's pretty hilarious. It is, but it's interesting though that they have a parliament rather than a Congress. I find that very interesting, and that in the early days, the only thing that got them that you would get into parliament is if you paid the most taxes. If, the more taxes you paid, the more you the easier you'll be part of parliament. And I'll be honest with you, that makes a lot of sense. You know, if you're paying up all the taxes, then you should be running the whole thing. At least in the context of this world. I don't think that's good in practice in real life. Wasn't that like that back in wasn't that the a prerequisite back in the old days of the U.S.? You know, you had to had pay taxes or own land. You had to be like a landowner or something in order to vote before they started, you know, expanding the voting rights over time, which took a long time, weirdly enough. Dang. All right, well, hilarious cartoon of House Steiner. We've already covered these guys, so let's see if there's anything more or anything interesting out of this. Anything more to add to Steiner?
Next door is the one people make fun of, and for some of the right reasons. Welcome to the Lyran Commonwealth. First of all, few call it that unless they're declaring war or arranging marriage, which if I'm frank might be the same thing in the same afternoon. So welcome to the House of Steiner. The Steiners are the ruling family and have been since virtually ever. They were founded as a merchant and industrialist conglomerate. They never stopped being exactly that. They celebrate their vast wealth by having far too many nobles, far too many noble titles, and historically largely incompetent generals. Save for the occasional flash in the pan, that is.
Think.
However, if they're strategically incompetent to the point that the concept of their scouting parties operating vastly excessive tonnage, even in modest probing actions, memes based more on truth than you think, then how do they survive, you ask? Well, money and industry, friends. Money and industry. House Steiner's backing is the industrial base and every bank that invested in it. They are the military-industrial complex. There are many good reasons they can afford to dump truck weapons into a situation, operational or not, piloted or not, and then continue to do so until the enemy leaves. While not stupendously famous for warfighting leadership or tactical brilliance, House Steiner can and will bury you with its vast assembly lines led by pretend generals until you give up or they get
Pretend
bored.
generals.
Every tragic comedy of their strategic planning is mostly covered by the sheer power of their pervasive economy and vast military industry.
They follow Brannigan's Art of War.
Was headed by 9 archons as patterned off ancient Athens of Terra, because early post-Terran colonies were like that, very idyllic. Then one guy deposed the other 8, decided to establish the Estates General to run the show, and finally hammer out some agreements on what rights meant. And it's kind of worked out. Technically, the Arcana of the Lyran Commonwealth is an absolute ruler, commander-in-chief of all military forces,
This man can kill planets on
unilaterally
accident.
make most governmental decisions with a modest nod. They run the show. They even hold the right to grant and remove noble titles
Yep.
in perpetuity, titles which hold significant power. So they're a ruthless autocrat, right? Not really. Most archons of House Steiner, aside from a few notable assholes, who need
Catherine, yeah,
extensive covering
just
and
screwed
will
everything up.
likely label a historical diss track, are mostly okay people. They delegate most decisions to the bureaucracy, the councils of state, appointed advisors, and the Estates General, and they typically just keep their heads down, or just go to the Solaris thing. Right, the Solaris thing. So there's a bullseye in the inner sphere in the murder for entertainment business, and it's right here. Solaris 7. This is pretty much Steiner in a nutshell. But I'm not an expert in these matters, so I'll turn it over to a local. He can sum it up better. Mr. Fisher, take it away.
Solaris 7 is the only place where you can pay money to watch 2 strangers beat each other to death, while also enjoying a corn dog.
Duncan, that's not true. Canopus exists. They have corn dogs last I went. And a very good Outback.
I think Canopus banned trans fats, my dude. I've only ever seen funnel cake. Oh, and they do a lot of food on a stick. Saves napkins.
So
lets
bread
you
and
clean up.
circuses, basically.
Stick food is
They operate
really
on
the
bread and
way of the
circuses.
future. I wish we'd thought of it first. Sticks truly are the yardstick of food. I'm Duncan Fisher. I stand by this statement. Sticks are the future. Mark my words.
Duncan, this is costing me a fortune.
Oh, right. HPG bills. So, Solaris 7. Murder is more or less very legal, so long as you do it in the box on TV, and everyone has a really great time. In fact, It's fantastic. There's explosions and music, and I'm there. Every night, on every screen. I tell you all the things I think you need to hear, and most of them are very accurate. Very, very accurate. Anyways, this is Duncan Fisher signing off. And this appearance cost Professor Tex 1,485 C-bills.
Thank you, Duncan. Steiner's
I
Space
learned
is a
nothing from
complex
that.
thing. Not good, not evil, just very big. In fact, I think that the Lyran Commonwealth is much like a cosmic horror. Some giant, blind, idiot god.
Oh
just
no!
waiting there, happily making money and strudel, singing merrily to itself until someone comes
What a
over and
design.
flips the table. And then it becomes very, very upset.
The Lederhosen. What can I say? What more can I add to the library that I haven't said in the research? They're hilarious. They're freaking awesome. They just make giant, more and more bigger robots. More and more, just make them big. And then follow the Zap Brannigan's Book of War and just send wave after wave of kill robots. Oh my gosh. That's insane. Who we got here? Free
Anyways, moving to our
Russell
right,
Haig.
because space has that, we have to talk about this strip of the inner sphere that's been nothing but hell. We're not talking about these a-holes here, because they're not from here, or rather, not recently. These are the clans, and for those uninitiated, they're a strange, deep space civilization of state-mandated, eugenics program, warrior caste, combat cult weirdos. Even by our standards, they're very weird. They also got completely wrecked by the phone company. It was a pretty okay time.
Really?
For us, that is. So, here's what remains of the somewhat free Rasselhag Republic. So these guys were a thing, briefly, until these guys decided they shouldn't be. Because they were between these guys and Terra, which is controlled by the phone company, who wasn't cool with these guys taking a bite out of everything on their way to the Telecoms HQ for very odd, strangely specific, quasi-spiritual reasons, which for very different, strangely specific, quasi-spiritual reasons, the phone company decided to murder them. Guys, as it turns out, you can make people show up to an ambush by just asking them. Remember, be kind, it pays dividends. Before that unpleasantness, Rasselhag was a state come from the space between House Kurita over here and House Steiner. These Kuritan buffer worlds were, before Kurita came along, an independently free principality of mostly culturally Scandinavian colonists. This small state was then overrun by House Kurita, who had to pry the worlds from them after 30 years of guerrilla warfare. They didn't go quietly. They were always a somewhat fiercely independent border region who resisted assimilation into the Draconis Combine. Over time, and some phone company intervention, Theodore Kurita was convinced of the benefits of creating a buffer zone between the houses of Steiner and Kurita by granting Rasselhag independence. Some of Kurita's guys were so mad at this that they resisted the government, and Kurita had to fight what was called the Ronin War. After these rowdy warriors the belt, Rasselhag became essentially a neutral buffer between the two superpowers of House Kurita and House Steiner. They were independent for almost 2 decades before these assholes came in, and then they weren't anymore. This much of them survived as a rump state under the custodianship of Comstar until 3070, when Clan Ghostspear more or less took them in. Because Ghostspear is of a similar cultural background and understands the importance of family. Good people mostly. Kinda clingy, though. For the record, Rasselhag was not a paper dragon. They collapsed only after fighting bravely in the face of overwhelming odds. They gave the clanners a hard fight on every world, and in the deep black between stars. It was a Rasselhag pilot who kamikazed the Okan's warship and stopped the invasion for a year. Rasselhag is like that. They'll smile all day, but fuck around and the Viking comes out, and it doesn't stop until you or they are very, very dead. Next up, I have to talk about this. This was once the cradle of humanity, but it's been a hotbed of a lot of historical issues. Originally, the first circuit of what was called SL-COMNET was laid out in this chunk of space once called the Hegemony. Then, well, there was this guy named Jerome Blake, and as fate would have it, he'd be the last employee of SL-COMNET. But some assholes in time would think that everything that poured out of his goddamn mouth was the word of...
Wow, what the... Oh, he's a cultist?
Right, so I guess next time I have to talk about the periphery, then the deep periphery. Great. Goat, play me out. Team, show these people how we pay our bills. See you next time. Stay safe.
Well, that was really funny. That was pretty funny. I don't know how much I got out of this, but I did have a lot of fun listening to Tex explaining in such a comedic manner. BattleTech 101. Oh man, I'm not sure what more I could say. I definitely gonna have to pull up some videos on the deep lore. I think going to Davian will be the next stop. Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, like Warhammer. Everyone's an a-hole, I guess. Everyone's an a-hole in this place. A-hole enough to put on some lederhosen on a mech and do a flying elbow on their heads. But this was a great way to make them look fun. You know, they really did sound fun and very interesting. You know, and very scary considering the House Liao. That's horrifying. From birth to 15, you're not a citizen, and then they have to evaluate you to find out, to see if you're worthy of being a citizen. And you could fit all the criteria of being worthy, and they could still say no. You don't fit. You get to, and we'll use you as fodder. Oh gosh, we'll use you as a slave fodder. The Federated Sons, the House Davian, I definitely want to check them out. They're the good boys. They just didn't last very long. That was like a footnote. Now I want to know exactly how they're running, how Space Britain and Space France is running the whole thing. And I'm definitely leaving the Free World League last because it's pretty obvious. It's pretty obvious how they're running if it's anything like Space USA. So, you know, I'll just have the same. It's just gonna be the same writing rules. You know, if I were to create a country like that, you know, I don't know if living in America here, you know, in the U.S. I already know how the country works. So it's very easy to create a democratic, fictional democratic country in my writings. It's not gonna do much. The whole Russell Haig thing, that was just so fast and so random. I felt like I got nothing out of that, honestly. I mean, yes, it was very funny. You know, the telephone joke and everything. I'm sure once I start researching Russell Hogg, the joke will no longer fly in my head and actually fly into my face, and I'll find myself with a pie being pied out. Be like, so basically, there's this somehow got like they were gonna be a buffer. They were Space Scandinavia, Space Vikings, and they got pushed around by House Kurita, but House Kurita realized, we could use them as a buffer state, so we'll leave them alone. And then that led to the Ronin War. So now I'm gonna have to. Wow, there's a lot of things are tied in. So I gotta figure that one out. How I'm gonna approach that. And then all of a sudden, these clans came out of nowhere that's supposed to be weird and strange, according to text, and resulted in them pushing Russell Hogg into a tiny little pocket. I was expecting, so yeah, I thought I noticed there was no Space Russia. I'm sure there is, probably in the outer areas, but yeah, it was fun. There was information, but it was fun. It was fun. You know, it's fine because a nice little break. You know, say a nice little break. I got a nice laugh out of it and everything. That was a nice little break from the research and just have a little fun. You know, saying not get too not get so deep in thought. And, you know, saying turn into some liberal arts over analyzing. Get the stick out. Gotta always make sure you don't have the stick inserted, you know. Have a little fun sometimes. So yeah, big thanks to Vic. This was a nice fun watch, and really helps the channel have a little change of pace and have a little fun on the research side, and not get too serious. After all, writing is supposed to be fun. Building worlds and creating lore is supposed to be really fun, and you know that's why I enjoyed the orcs a lot, because they're not taken so seriously, and it seems like from the way Tex explained it, that there's some fun there's some fun hilarity within the houses to be had, and yeah, gotta make sure that gotta keep lighthearted here on this channel. Most definitely gotta keep lighthearted. Say no sticks, no sticks, no sticks. Okay, no sticks up there. All right, this is not a liberal arts channel. All right, let's keep that out. All right, so head on over to Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com and grab yourself a copy of The Impossible Man, a strange fantasy novel written by me. You'll find links down in the description below, along with links to other merch such as pins, stickers, t-shirts, music. Enjoy the products. Thank you for your patronage. And if you happen to have a copy of The Impossible Man and did lore videos and analytical videos, so on, thank you very much. I look forward to hearing your thoughts and your videos. And if you're interested, you can join me on my live multi-stream on Twitch and Kick every Monday through Thursday, 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, for lore research, cultural studies, and gaming, plus more. I look forward to hanging out with you. So, until the next round of Mechwarrior BattleTech research, thank you all for joining me, and I wish you all a good night. Buenas noches, and oyusuminasai.